Welcome back, friends. I am so pumped for you to meet my guest today. This is Morgyn Danae. She is a woman who is doing work that is of the moment. She is a recovery coach and mentor specializing in dance, core wellness, and somatic trauma recovery. She supports primarily women with a creative spirit to reclaim, transform, and express their unique inner core beauty and power. She's also a choreographer, and I also found out, just like myself, that she is a belly dancer, and that's been part of her journey. So, Morgyn, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for having me. It's very good
Yes.
to be here with you. Yes.
Yes. So you have so many things that you do that I love, and I love that you're bringing in creativity, you're bringing in nature, you're bringing in the movement of the body, and inherent within that is the idea of connecting with our body's wisdom and in our intuition. And there's so many things in common between your work and my work. So I feel that my listeners are going to benefit so much from learning a little bit more about you and your story and the work that you are doing to help people with trauma recovery. So do you want to just share a little bit of your background and your story with us and how you came into this work?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I say that heal or heal thyself is a statement that really kind of sums up my path, both my personal recovery path and my professional path. Because really my own healing process and the seeking and the necessity of finding that healing was concurrent with my calling to study and to practice with
Okay.
supporting others. So it's always been kind of that inside out kind of process. And so yeah, I'm going to be 53 this month, so I've got a long story. It's getting longer and longer, so I can make it concise. So I was born into a kind of a confusing mix. I think many of us, or who are kind of drawn to working with healing trauma and healing in a deep place. My family was very creative, very gifted, very amazing, very loving and affectionate, and artists and performers and free thinkers and such. And also there was a lot of trauma, and there was mental illness going through, and addiction and abuse and neglect. So it was a house with or a family with much laughter and joy and connection, and also storms and wounds and challenges. Um, and that included alcoholism, and then recovery with that. So I witnessed a lot of things. I was exposed to a lot of kind of powerful experiences and powerful concepts, and so that really has shaped me. In a lot of ways. There's been a lot of healing in my family over the years. As we
Mm.
heal, we can, if people are open to it, everybody's doing their work. We are all kind of healing along together. And so that was kind of the seeds of everything. And it was kind of into my late teens and early 20s that my body started to break down. We didn't, this was in the 80s. We didn't like talk necessarily like as much about mental illness, panic attacks, depression, da 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 da. It
Mhm.
wasn't as much a part of the general vocabulary. But I was definitely experiencing some of these things, and just a lot of different things: panic attack, anxiety, weight gain from that, but also powerful spiritual experiences and creative inspiration, and all of these, right, the together. And so it was kind of in my mid 20s that I kind of hit a wall. My father had been diagnosed with cancer, and was basically in the process of starting, the dying process was starting to be catalyzed there, and I thought I would die. So there was some real, attachment.
Yeah.
And so basically it brought up I was already dealing with also severe low back pain,
Okay.
and had kidney stones as well. Like 25, that started to happen. 23, this. So my body was showing somatically, right? The body based symptoms were showing severe PMS, severe cramps, severe like violent menstrual cramps. Those were things that were going, and yet you could look at me and I was, active and seemed fit and all of that, right? So so I was hitting a wall where I knew that I thought I was going to die,
Mm-hmm.
just emotionally, so much pain,
Yep.
and it just came to a place where something really major had to happen. It was the biggest wake up call in my life. I've had many others after,
Yeah.
but it was like the turning point from my soul's journey, and that was when I started to work with a spiritual healer, really seek out other holistic body-based healers, acupuncture, anything I could find, because with the severe low back pain too, I was being told by, people around me who were supposed authorities that, oh, you have scoliosis, you're not going to be able to ever heal this, you're just going to have this chronic pain for the rest of I've been told certain things like that in my journey, and I just kind of
Mm-hmm.
ignore them and just pursue the solution. So it was basically kind of this was in Tucson, Arizona, surrounded in this amazing healing community that I sought out, and really all the physical modalities were super important in that process, and this was trauma manifesting in my body. This was because also sexual abuse, emotional abuse was part of my story, childhood. And so you don't always we and this is where we say people don't always know what trauma means or how it's affecting them, but that's trauma right there. That's trauma, and it's reflected in the body, in our emotional patterns, in the kind of relationship dynamics I was choosing, and it just needed to shift, and so doing the spiritual work too, the heart-based work, learning my story from my own perspective, not feeding the belief that my place in the family, the one who had it so good, da 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 da. Well,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this body is breaking down. I'm breaking down. Something's not right. Something did not have it so good,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so it's also can be the dichotomy of the love and the fear,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of had to pull that apart so that I could give myself the space
Mm-hmm.
to own my own story and own and recognize my own pain so that I could heal,
Mm-hmm.
so that I could heal it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to, if we keep burying it or getting sidetracked and saving everybody else, da 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 da, especially females, we're so taught that, or sensitive males, whatever it is, any imbalance in that way. So basically, I was brought back to myself in a big way,
Mm-hmm.
because literally I would not be alive today if I had not done the work I was going to do. And we are losing people, you know,
Yeah.
people are taking their lives more and more in these times. And I would have been on that path,
Mm-hmm.
And I did have to revisit that several times in my journey, hitting those places of severe
Mm-hmm.
depression and
Mm-hmm.
pockets and breakdowns. And so anyway, but in that concurrently, I felt the calling as I was doing my own healing work, and the belly dance opened that up in dance. I mean, I do different forms of dance or social dance as well, or just spontaneous dance, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. But belly dance specifically, at that time in my 20s, as I was finding my calling, right? I It was like, oh, I am called. I always was a dancer just because I love to dance. And I say, if you have the dancer spirit, it doesn't matter if you take a single class, if you've never taken a class, you're still a dancer. It's in your heart, it's in your
Mm-hmm.
soul,
Yep.
right? And so, but I was recognized I am called to embodying and sharing dance as a healing art.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in that way belly dance was opening that up. So that form gave me that vehicle. And other forms have come with that over the years too. But concurrently, I was also studying an ancient Chinese Taoist healing art, Qinate Song, integrated internal organ massage, with a wonderful woman, Allison Post, and she was teaching unwinding the belly as well as part of that. I mean, that was her kind of signature term, but then it was all of that. And so working with belly massage, breath work, energy work, all of this was happening with all the prayer work, all the spiritual work. I was doing the reflection and guided meditation. So I was combining that in my work with people,
Yeah.
and was able to, you know, bring that into dance movement classes, into workshops, into sessions, working with scar tissue as well, and different issues that collect in the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of like continued to evolve. And so there's many layers that I continue to study and such, in different fields and fitness and body work and, you know, and trauma work. And so, not to, so I won't give all those details, but that's kind of the roots of where I came from. And so in the last, a little over a year, I came out to California, kind of completing a whole cycle that started in Tucson, went to the East Coast for 20 years. And then it was like, oh, okay, it's time to go back to the West. You
Yeah.
know, and I'm gonna take everything and I'm gonna put it together. And oh, I'm gonna do it just in time for the pandemic to hit. So now, you know, it's like it is perfect timing because, you know, we're on call now, you
Oh
know,
my gosh, yes.
but you know, and then it's just navigating, you know, the time.
Yes. Well, that's a really good segue into just the word trauma, the discussion of trauma. Whether I'm talking to my friends that are in education right now, or we're talking about the huge racial divides that we're experiencing in our country, or we're talking about how women have, for thousands of years, been internalizing horrible messages about themselves and their bodies and their abilities, or it's actual physical, sexual, spiritual abuse. There's many different ways that we can define trauma. And I feel like it is one of the words that is of the moment. You know, you're hearing it even on the news, you turn on the local news even, and it's a word that you're going to hear a couple of times during each broadcast. And so we're using it so often that I'm not even sure that we always are using it mindfully and that we understand what we're saying when we're using that word. So you as a practitioner, how do you personally define trauma?
Okay. Well, of course, that could go on for a long time too. But what I want to say, one thing I want to say about that in and what happens in our society as well is that things get, there's so much, we're so used to everything. It's because it's also trauma driven. Our society is trauma driven,
Yes,
you know?
yes,
And so
yes.
everything becomes like so dramatized
Mm-hmm.
and so, you know, loud and noisy,
Mm-hmm.
instead of going inside and settling and slowing down
Mm-hmm.
and reflecting into what does that mean? What is happening here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's this cacophony. And then social media is a cacophony of trauma, 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 and finger
Yes.
pointing and all these things, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's also wonderful healing and such. But going deeper into that, what I'm going to say that we're not generally saying, and this is kind of from where I was trained and taught, we're first of all underneath that trauma is showing up still, I'll go another layer, but as a symptom of fear-based reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're beings of love. We came from love. We're going to love. Love is what drives us ultimately, even if we're being run by our fears, we all want to be loved,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we all flourish in love. And so that separation from love, from our divine essence, is where the trauma begins. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be this loud, it can be. But if we just kind of settle into that first and then recognize that trauma is one of the tenets of trauma is that it the way that it impacts is it we separate from ourselves on some level. We
Okay.
separate maybe from our sense of love for ourselves. We separate from our sense of our value, our worth. We separate from our feeling of being in our bodies, present in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We separate from each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's all in our faces right now, all the fragmentation in our society. So if we slow down and go back in, and come to that center place, give ourselves permission for that to look from that center place out, then you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Recognize settling in. And that's where we can also recognize that one of the tenets of trauma on that physical level. See, trauma it can be that jolting moment. It can be a jolting moment in our circumstance, right?
Hmm.
Abusive, natural disaster, accident, whatever that is. It can also be the ongoing, continual wearing away,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it and so what happens physically in that too is that the nervous system, we are just as we are divine beings, and this for some reason this is making me choke up. Who knows what this is, but I'm just going to go with it.
Go with it. Do the
But
feeling.
just, yeah, but because it's so deep,
Hmm.
as divine beings, we are made of love. We come from love. But that separation, how much that has impacted us, is impacting the way that our nervous systems run. And our nervous systems are
Hmm.
connected to how we connect to our divinity and how we connect to spirit and to
Yep.
wholeness, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
they're part of the physical construct, that conduit, right?
Mm.
And just as in our spine and the connecting into our guts and everything, right?
Yeah.
And so we are designed in our nervous systems to be primarily in rest and digest.
Mm.
And rest and digest is that kind of balanced state. I mean, homeostasis, it kind of shifts and ebbs. But that is our kind of balanced state,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
kind of a peaceful place going along, right? Kind of. But then in trauma, we shift into our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight or freeze.
Hmm.
That's a survival mode. That was designed, we were designed into that by as beings of nature to survive, to handle the moments when we have to show up, we have to move fast, we have to get out of there. We always use the image of the tigers coming.
Yeah. Right.
Tigers are not everywhere in the world, but whatever, the big animal, whatever. Those moments of danger, or when we have to, we just have to kind of be ultra on alert, you know. So it's got its purpose, but it gets completely out of balance,
Hmm.
so that the nervous system goes into overdrive.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
with what happens with trauma too, when it's embedded, it has reprogrammed the nervous system to move primarily more into the the sympathetic, right, the fight or flight or freeze mode. So that balanced state that we rest in, we digest in, we
Hmm.
process our emotions in, we reflect in,
Right. Yeah. True.
is
True.
not given the space. It doesn't have the same space, because
Mm.
this is trying to get us, save us, trying to
Mm.
protect us.
Yeah.
And so when we can see that in the body, we, then it's constantly worrying inside, worrying, not worrying but also worrying, but it's constantly moving in the body, and so it's kind of wearing us down from the
Mhm.
inside out,
Mhm.
right? And so it's causing all these different issues, imbalances in the body, including mental illness and digestive issues, inflammation, even core issues and body aches and pains and low immunity and fibromyalgia, and how many other things are being connected because we're being
Yeah.
worn down.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
so our society, you can see our society does not give space for moving into rest and digest.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, and it can be like a trend or whatever. People try to put it out there and make it into whatever, make some money off of it or whatever. But
Yep.
like as like as a society and now a world that actually allows that space to actually be in our natural, in the natural flow of the way we were designed to be, and to heal this, to give it the space to heal it,
Mm. Mm. Oh my gosh. That is rich, rich,
instead
rich.
of continually jabbing it.
Yeah. Right.
And so we are on high alert now.
Mm.
there's high alert going on everywhere. I mean, and I don't even say that as a dramatic thing. It's just saying one of the greatest gifts we can do is to, because our vibration shifts,
Mm-hmm.
and it's there's a lot of layers to that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it is a practice. It is a daily practice, and then we're talking about generational trauma.
Okay, so that was my next question that I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I heard you say already is that trauma doesn't need to be an acute experience, it can be a long-term drip, right? But
Yes.
something that I personally have experience with that has shocked me over and over and over is generational trauma and cellular memory
Yes.
and DNA memory
Yes.
from our ancestors.
Yes.
So I'll just give a quick example of this just because it's a fast one. My mom, I have a good relationship with my mom. When she was a little girl, she was like 4, she fell off a swing. She really hurt her pelvis, her hip.
Mhm.
And she was the good middle child and she never told her parents about it and she just, whatever. So now she has this chronic hip issue where she can't fully open up, like into butterfly. She
Mhm.
can't fully open up that hip and it always gets caught or whatever.
Yeah.
I did not have this injury, but I have the same physical problem.
Yeah.
I have to really work on opening up that area and it wants to get caught. And even though that's not my trauma and I'm working on, those are her lessons, not my lessons. The more I do that, the more it opens up, the more I connect with that feminine core energy, the more that opens up. But it shocks me that, somehow that got imprinted on me as her offspring, her injury. That's crazy, but I bet you see that all the time. So do you want to talk a little bit about generational trauma and the memory that even our cells and our DNA holds?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really powerful, story too. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's really powerful, and it's another way of looking at things that
Mm.
is, well, it's deep,
Yeah.
you know, and it's interesting too because and I'm going to take it back to again the way I was trained, really in looking at that. Again, we're talking about a legacy of fear-based reality
Mm-hmm.
that gets passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And how when we're healing ourselves, we're healing our DNA, we're healing the patterns, we're healing, basically what was passed on, but what was being passed on in our ancestors' spirits, in their bodies.
Yeah.
You know, of course, we're connected. I mean, and then we came physically from our line as well. You know, and so it make sense in that way? I mean, sure, we're physical beings and we're spiritual beings, and so these things are kind of they are going to be passed on because they're the content that exists. It's not like we start fresh from scratch when
Mm-hmm.
we're born. We're coming from all of these influences, and we're matter. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're made from our parents, and they were made from and so and so on. So and it's also emotional patterns and behavioral patterns and all of that, going on, memory. And basically, I think that when we can kind of just accept that everything is connected instead of
Yeah.
this compartmentalization,
Yep.
that you can only really fully you can really only abuse and create full structures and such of abuse if you're in separation.
Mm.
So if you're owning that we all are connected, then of course it becomes a lot more intimate, and
Yeah.
you can recognize those things. Another thing is sometimes there are, and it depends on the story, but sometimes there are going to be, accidents that manifest right in the body. But sometimes there's a story behind why the accident happened, what it's reflecting.
Mm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not in every single case, but you know what I mean? So that's also going back to the somatic. What is the body reflecting? What is it attracting? What
Mm.
does that have to do with? Does that make sense?
Yep. Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. So When you are working with a client, then you have all of these different tools in your toolbox, and you obviously have a rich and deep personal experience with this type of body work as well. What does it look like when somebody comes to you? What does it look like to work with you? What is that process?
Okay. Well, it kind of, first of all, there's going to be, there's a meeting. We're going to meet, we're going to consult first, and find out if we're a match. And then it kind of depends on what I'm doing with the person, because I have different forms of work that I'm doing, and sometimes I'm working with somebody on several levels using, different things. So, for example, if I'm working with them through movement, one-to-one specifically too. I'm going to go through a whole, I really, basically in anything that I do, ideally I'm assessing, I'm doing an assessment,
Okay.
finding out about their history. I'm listening between the lines again, because you're saying, people don't always necessarily know what trauma is or know they've had it. And I don't assume that I'm going to find, oh, a pocket of trauma or something. It depends,
Yeah.
I stay open to what's going to come out,
Mhm.
because a lot of the time in listening to people's story, because that's a big piece. It's super important, listening, being present. Not just, I'm not going to come in just assuming I know everything. That's ridiculous. We don't know until we listen and learn.
Mm.
And so, really kind of that. And then I'm also looking at their movement patterns. I'm looking at, I'm kind of wanting to find out in their lifestyle too what their relationship is to themselves, like how they treat themselves, how they live, how they want to live, what changes they want, and what are they open to too, you know,
Yes.
because you just really have to meet people where they're at. If they're not ready for something, it's not really going to be helpful to throw something at them.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so really it starts with that kind of that assessment meeting.
Okay.
Um, and from there I can start to get a sense of, the program that I'm going to put together for them,
Okay.
drawing from what I work with. Um, and a lot of the time too, in that, now if they're online, I'm not necessarily going to, I'm not going to be able to do direct body work with them.
Right.
But if they're online, I can talk to them if they are going to want to learn to work on themselves, do self
Okay.
massage with belly massage, internal organ massage, scar tissue massage, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
if I'm working with them for one to one in person, then sometimes if I'm working with them with one modality, say body work, or I'm working with them with dance movement or even fitness, because I work with holistic, fitness in the core rehabilitation and
Mhm.
strengthening such. Um, we'll do work with that, and then they'll see, oh, this piece could actually help you also. So why don't we start doing this? So it kind of unfolds.
Okay. Right.
Because I will generally have a picture. I'll see, oh, this could work in this way, but it has to unfold because not everybody's ready for that.
Right. And so what you're saying is that each person that you're working with is really getting a completely individualized program
Yes.
for them based on where they are, what their needs are. You're not just doing a standard set of things with each person that comes to you necessarily.
No, no. I mean, with certain, I mean, of course, I have different techniques that will be applied in certain areas, but yeah, it's very customized, you
Okay.
know, and um, and also, I'm paying attention to what people are open to,
Mhm.
and what they're, again, that can evolve, so they can, maybe be ready for something else
Mhm.
down the line. So yes, it is very personal and personalized.
So one of the things I feel like I hear you're saying is that a big part of this process is helping people to come home to themselves.
Yes.
And I know that for my journey with my body has been, it's felt like crawling out of thousands of years of horrible women hate, honestly, to like just when I think I'm beyond it, oh no, there's another layer, there's another layer.
Yeah.
But beginning the journey for me was letting my body move in an instinctually feminine way when I started with belly dance.
Mhm.
And that was when I first started hearing the term divine feminine. So, without going too deep into that, I would be so curious to hear from you. especially from a body work and a movement and a dance standpoint, what does divine feminine mean to you?
Okay. Well, it's very interesting because it kind of, I see it as part of that reclaiming of the love-based reality, bringing in the balance again.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is kind of the missing piece that is going to open the door. And this is also part of my training, that I've been given, opening the door to the transformation of going from fear-based reality to love-based reality, which is a big part of the healing of our trauma, our separation from love,
Mm-hmm.
separation from ourselves. The divine feminine does require that, and it's not that it's not like there can't be powerful movement or, all of that, but it does require an element of it is the slowing down,
Mm-hmm.
is the going inward.
Mm-hmm.
It requires the inward journey.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have to go within to reclaim these pieces that have been so rejected, so demonized, so
Mm-hmm.
devalued, and so degraded.
Yeah.
And it also connects right into nature, Mother Nature, and the cycles of nature, allowing for recognizing cycles. Because, we see that that's something that is there with indigenous cultures, is that recognition of cycles of nature, working with the cycles. And, an automated, consumerized, industrialized complex that it wants to, it doesn't want that. It doesn't allow for that, those natural, it wants to control everything.
Yeah.
Everything's a commodity, a
Everything's
product.
the same all the time.
And it's always about production, and it's always about, but not serving life force,
Yeah.
right? And that's just a wounded reality. It's not any true essence of any reality. It's just that's just a wounded reality. We'll put it over here, you get to be healed here. But the divine feminine is so much connecting into that reclamation
Mm-hmm.
of that balance. And it can be very subtle. It can be very subtle when we're not going to notice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't get the fanfare per se. And that's one way, but it is also extremely fierce and extremely powerful.
Yes.
I mean, Mother Earth could simply destroy us in maybe less than 5 minutes if she chose. She
Yeah.
could just bat an eye and we'd be gone.
Right.
Or she could just wipe us out. But that's not what's happening. There's
Mm-hmm.
vast grace and patience.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's also, I see the divine feminine is also, it's deeply wise and insightful and feeling, very much feeling,
Yeah.
and magical and
Mm-hmm.
sensual, and um, and wild, but also it's many facets, right? But also elegant and regal, and so it's not just one thing, but it just holds firm.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I see it too. It is what it is, and it has many facets.
Yeah. Yes.
Just just as anything divine.
I love that. That's such a beautiful way of stating it. I know for myself, just from the background that I came from, the word feminine had a very controlling and controlled sense to it. Like, this is your role as a woman. This is how you're supposed to be. You need to stay in this sphere of life.
Mhm.
And so even the term divine feminine honestly totally freaked me out for years, like probably good
Sure.
years.
Yeah.
And what I've been learning is so many of the things that you just said, like, yes, you go inward, and this is not a weak, timid, wounded thing that you're going to encounter. It's power, but it's also playful and it's
Mhm.
surprising.
Yeah.
So I love that you're helping women
Yeah.
find that because I think so many of us right now have deep, deep woundings about what it means to be feminine.
Absolutely.
And it's
I
a
mean,
work.
if it gets put down very quickly.
Yeah, yes,
It's
it
one
does.
of the first things that we want to put down, you
Yep,
know?
yep.
Why do we need to, why just cut that out? Cut it out, you
Mm-hmm,
know? The put
mm-hmm,
down.
mm-hmm. Well, man, you have a lot of different things to draw upon in your work, but I'm curious to know a little bit about your lifestyle and especially with the pandemic. What has self-care looked like for you? What has helping, mental health support, how has that looked for you during this weird, weird pandemic time that we've been going through?
Yeah, this sh- surreal time.
Totally surreal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And continues to be surreal. Um, so, kind of to put it in the framework of my own mental health recovery, wound healer, heal thyself, right? Um, that I came out, I moved out to California, and I knew I was leaving a whole kind of 20 years of accumulation of community and professional reputation and all of this, just all of it. I was leaving a plateau. And in my own recovery, I've come to the other side. I mean, we work on ourselves. It's not like I don't have anything to deal with, obviously, but I'm not living with mental illness anymore, but I did live with that trauma-based mental illness that would come up, and it would show itself in severe depression and panic attack, dissociation, breakdowns, and my life would fall apart, and I would have to build up again, start up again, right? And anybody who's had that knows exactly what that is. It's pure devastation, basically. And but then you find that place again. And so it's been many years since I've dealt with that, in that to that place. It's probably been 9 years. So I guess that's a long time, but in a way, it's not a long time. But so moving out here in the back of my mind, I was excited for the adventure, the unknown also. But I knew that I had to prove to myself, I not just prove, but I just needed to see that I was going to hold firm, because I came here by myself as well. I mean, I drove out with my sister, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So to come here and then have the pandemic hit, so that you're in a new place and you can't just go out to just make community and da, da,
Yeah.
da,
No,
in that
totally.
way. You're really back on yourself.
Yeah.
And so I certainly wouldn't deny that deeper layers of trauma have surfaced, and definitely were surfacing in that time, and that was part of the process. So part of that is also working with the nervous system. So absolutely being conscious, working with the breath work it's part of my, practice, self-practice as well. Really being conscious of having even nutrients that are going to support the nervous system, magnesium, potassium, electrolytes,
Yep. Yep.
just really making sure I'm taking the herbs that I need
Mhm.
and eating the healing foods, Epsom salt baths, aromatherapy. Really, I make priority for my temple time, which is my prayer and reflection, and my grounding with Mother Earth,
Mm.
doing my energy work on myself, clearing and doing that with prayer and visualization,
Mm.
um, and movement, dance, and exercise. Super important for me. And so we had major isolation, obviously, in many places, but California, it's gone for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so going by myself into nooks in nature, I mean, I would call myself a fairy witch, basically just born by that. Fairy medicine is just how it is. So we have to find our nooks in nature.
I
you know
totally see this in you.
got to do this. Yeah. So it's like connecting with nature in that way, because we are just so loved. We can really bring in that that communing, that communication that's happening. It's just love, so much love and connection happening. And so doing that, keeping the body moving, taking the early morning walks or the walk in the evening when you can, that kind of thing. And and really dancing in nature. And I'll just dance anywhere, really. I don't care if I'm at the edge of the beach, I'm at the edge of the water, I'm in a park, I'm in a parking lot, I'm under a tree down the street. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Walking down the sidewalk. Because all of those things, I'm just determined to be in that joy, to lift my vibration. It doesn't really, I'm not hurting anybody and I don't have any intention. So it really doesn't matter if people are judging. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter,
Mhm. Mhm.
because I am doing what I have to do to be happy, to be in that joy. And that's saving my own life. That's how we save our lives.
Yeah.
We value our lives. We do what we have to do with love.
Mm. That's
And
beautiful.
so all of those have been really big pieces, and just really having to be clear when, recognizing, oh, there's a big lesson. Oh, wow, there's a big chunk of some childhood trauma up here. This part. So a lot of reevaluation. I think we've been all doing a lot of reevaluation
Mhm.
about certain things.
Mm. Yep, for sure. Now, um, I understand that you're still doing choreography, you're still dancing. Are you performing as a dancer these days or recently?
I haven't been performing recently. Actually, I came out here. That's kind of starting. Things are kind of starting to open up more.
Okay.
So I can't say that I am, um, connected in with performing yet here.
Okay. But it is going to be happening in the future, we think.
Yes, that is
And
very much my intention.
my question, my query, I'm so interested to hear this, is how is your work as a healer, like a somatic healer with the body, informing your work as a dancer and choreographer? How are those two things interacting with each other?
Yeah. So, first of all, again, it's connecting into the divine. We don't do these things alone, I don't believe. I believe really that we are really guided and supported and loved, and that when we call in the divine and we recognize that divine within us and we're calling it forth, it kind of powers us, and then we channel that, and we become like kind of like living crystals, or
Mm.
because we're always, we're made of vibration, so we're always vibrating,
Yes.
whether it's positive, negative, you know. And so that is a part of it, is really connecting into that. And so being really present in the body. So it's not just about like having a certain look or getting, impressing people, but it's embodying, being present in the body. It's in
Mm.
being in the breath, being in the prayer, being in the communion, and like conveying that message of healing, and connecting with the people,
Yeah.
connecting with the audience.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of really where it came from first, and so I mean, it's funny because, there's kind of Christians who do worship dance, and I connect to Christ consciousness, but I don't connect to any particular religion.
Mhm.
But I recognize what they're doing.
Mhm.
Dance is worship, dance as a divine expression, or performance as a divine expression.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of an ancient thing. And so I just kind of intrinsically connect to it that way.
Okay.
And so you kind of see where performance can get to that place where it's more just about, say, getting attention or impressing people, or kind of titillation even, or whatever that might be. And kind of on the other end, it's like, this is a gift to the divine. This is a celebration of the divine. It's gratitude, expressing gratitude, and also an opportunity kind of to transmit healing energy,
Mhm. Mhm.
or a healing story, or a healing message.
That's amazing. And I completely agree with you about that. Just the most powerful performances that I have experienced, both as an audience member and as a performer myself, have been the ones where I have shown up fully and let myself bare my soul and let myself really connect. And I feel like this is just you. Like, this is who you are. You have found that sweet spot and you have figured out how to live there, and this is what you're teaching other people to do. So I know that you have an offer right now for people. You do some one-on-one work and you have 30 minutes, kind of like a discovery call. You want to share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, it's just a 30-minute session to just a free clarity call to connect. I ideally, well, maybe over Zoom, also could be FaceTime, all the
Yep.
different ways. But to really kind of connect and find out what questions somebody might have, what they're dealing with. I mean, it's 30 minutes, so it's kind of like what are you dealing with that might connect into what I offer?
Right.
And so they can get a sense, because there are just things that people are dealing with that they don't even know can be healed,
Hmm.
or how to heal that. And so it's an opportunity, for us to connect and also see energetically if we, are a match, but also to kind of find out more about the programs that I offer and how those might come together or might address the concerns that, a person's dealing with.
Okay, so people have the option to book that with you for that free 30-minute session,
Mm-hmm.
30 to 30.
Yeah.
And I know that you also
Yeah.
have interest in working with conscious individuals, nonprofits, communities, and organizations in areas of mental health through trauma recovery and holistic lifestyle and creative expression through dance, movement, and performance. So if
Yes.
anybody out there is listening to this and they're like, we need her, tell people how they can find you.
Absolutely. Well, I am at Gmail, morgandanae at gmail.com. I have a website, morgandanae.com. I am on Instagram, Morgyn Danae Wellness. And I'm on Facebook at Morgyn Danae or Morgyn Danae Wellness.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fine to give my number as well if somebody wants to leave me a
Okay, go
temporary
ahead.
call. It's area code 828-216-8125.
Okay.
And that is not a California area code, but I am in California. And so I've been doing Zoom sessions since 2013. And then locally, we're opening up to being able to work outside. I want to work with people outdoors or, house call if that's the calling. And so, yeah, because whether somebody's dealing with wanting to connect in their body through dance movement or breath work, guided meditation, dealing with any kind of core based issues, challenges, including low back and hip pain, pelvic issues, digestive issues, scar tissue from surgery, C-section, diastasis recti, or just even mental health recovery, wanting support in claiming your path and your self-care, your lifestyle, and really kind of claiming that dancer in all of this as well, a healthy dancer.
I love that. And I have no doubt that anyone that comes to you is going to receive deep help in healing through anything that you would work with them on, because I feel like coming back to what you said at the beginning, healer, heal thyself, like you have done the work. This woman has done the work and she's showing up authentically as somebody who has had to walk the path and has figured out how to get further down the line and on the other side of some really huge challenges with trauma. So she knows how to take you through that process. And I'm just so grateful for you and what you're doing in the world. And thank you so much for sharing this time with us and your beautiful light. And it's been a joy.
Thank
It's
you.
been a joy. So thank you for joining us. And for those of you listening, go ahead, go to the show notes. I'm going to have all of this information for Morgyn, for her contact information in the show notes. Thank you for watching. If you liked this, please hit that share button. And I always appreciate those 5-star reviews for those of you that are listening on your podcast apps. And we'll see you next time.